What drives a person to cross state lines, fueled by rage, obsession, and the need for revenge? The night was eerily quiet, save for the low hum of an approaching car. Inside, Sarah Martinez wasn't just another traveler on the road. She was on a mission, a one-way trip fueled by betrayal and vengeance. With each mile she drove, the memories played like a broken record in her head. Daniel's lies, the text messages, the photos, the gut-wrenching confirmation that she was never the only one. But she wasn't gonna cry. Not this time. This time she had a plan. Somewhere across the country, Emily Carter had no idea what was coming. She had no clue that the woman she had unknowingly betrayed was en route, carrying more than just heartbreak. She carried a deadly resolve. Sarah had one goal: erase the woman who stole her future. And as she neared the final stretch of her journey, she whispered the last words she would ever speak before crossing that line. I hope she's ready. What happens when jealousy turns lethal and love warps into the deadliest obsession? Welcome to True Crime Acts, where we look into the hidden truths behind some of the most chilling real-life events. Our mission is to uncover the stories that shock, educate, and spark change, reminding us that behind every headline is a victim, a family, and a ripple effect felt by an entire community. If you find this journey as important as we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to ensure you never miss another gripping exploration into the depths of human behavior. Sarah Martinez had spent the last 3 years envisioning a future with Daniel Carter, a man she believed was her soulmate. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but what relationship was? They had history, passion, and a connection she refused to throw away. But love, Sarah would soon learn, was only beautiful until it turned monstrous. It all started with a single message. At exactly 11:43 p.m., Sarah's phone lit up with a notification from an unknown number. The name at the top of the screen was Emily Patterson. Hey, I just wanted to be upfront. I've been seeing Daniel for a while now. I didn't know about you. I'm so sorry. At first, Sarah's mind rejected it. This had to be a mistake, a cruel joke. Daniel would never do this to her. But as she stared at the message, her hands clenched into fists, her breathing became shallow, and her heart pounded violently against her ribs. This wasn't just a mistake. This was real. Daniel had betrayed her. She clicked on Emily's profile, her fingers shaking as she scrolled through photos of another woman. A woman who, despite her best efforts, Sarah had never seen before. Emily was beautiful, blonde, smiling in every picture, carefree. Sarah's stomach twisted. Daniel had been sleeping with her behind Sarah's back. The pain she felt wasn't just heartbreak. It was rage, betrayal, humiliation. And in that moment, her obsession was born. Daniel would pay for this. But more than that, Emily would suffer the consequences of taking what wasn't hers. Have you ever seen love turn into something dangerous? At what point does heartbreak become an obsession? Revenge isn't just an impulse, it's a craft. Sarah spent hours, no days, piecing together Emily's life. She was no longer just a stranger. She was a puzzle Sarah was determined to solve. She dug through every detail: Emily's Instagram posts, her location tags, her daily routine, what time she left work, what time she returned home. Every interaction became a tool of destruction. Sarah needed Emily to trust her. So, she created a fake social media account, posing as a harmless woman looking for friendship. Her first message was calculated. Hey, love your style. Where do you shop? Looking for some fashion inspo. Emily, oblivious to the danger, responded within minutes. Sarah's lips curled into a smirk. She was in. For the next 2 weeks, Sarah and Emily exchanged friendly texts. Emily, unaware of the web tightening around her, shared tiny, seemingly meaningless details. What coffee shops she visited, what gym she worked out at, what days she had off. Sarah absorbed everything. She was studying her prey. Then came the final step: getting to Emily in person. Sarah booked a one-way flight to Texas, where Emily lived. She was done waiting. It was time to end this. Have you ever spoken to someone online not knowing their real intentions? What if someone you trusted was secretly studying your every move? When obsession takes over, logic disappears. As the plane landed, Sarah felt a wave of anticipation surge through her. This wasn't just a trip. This was a mission. Emily was here, living, breathing, stealing what wasn't hers. Sarah rented a car, drove to Emily's workplace, and waited. She parked 2 blocks away, keeping her distance but watching, waiting, memorizing. She saw Emily laughing with coworkers. She saw her brushing her hair back, adjusting her purse, checking her phone. Sarah's blood boiled. She imagined the confrontation, the fear in Emily's eyes when she realized who Sarah was. But Sarah had to be patient. For the next 2 days, Sarah watched Emily's movements in real life. What time she left work, what coffee shop she stopped at, what time she returned home. Every detail was memorized. Then finally, the perfect moment arrived. Emily's best friend was leaving town for the weekend. She would be home alone. Sarah's pulse quickened. Tonight, she would make her move. How often do we go about our lives, unaware that someone may be watching us from the shadows? What happens when revenge becomes the only reason to live? The night had finally arrived. Sarah Martinez stood motionless, hidden just beyond the glow of the streetlights, her heartbeat steady but cold. This was not a moment of hesitation. This was the climax of a plan she had meticulously crafted for weeks. Emily Patterson had no idea what was coming. Sarah had studied every detail of Emily's life. What time she got home, what time she locked her doors, and when she was most vulnerable. And tonight, Emily was alone. Sarah watched from the shadows as Emily's car pulled into the driveway. She saw the young woman step out, tossing her purse over her shoulder, her phone in her other hand. She was distracted, oblivious, just another routine night in her world. Sarah's fingers twitched, wrapping tighter around the object in her pocket. This was it. Emily walked toward her front door, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the porch light. She hummed a song, her mind elsewhere. She never saw Sarah coming. The moment Emily reached for her keys, Sarah stepped forward, her voice like a whisper cutting through the silence. Emily? Emily froze, the tiny hairs on her arms rising in an instant. Slowly she turned. A woman stood before her, partially concealed by the darkness, but the look in her eyes was unmistakable. A cold, calculated fury simmering beneath the surface. "Do I know you?" Emily asked, her voice hesitant, her grip tightening around her keys. Sarah tilted her head, smiling, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I think you do." Emily's stomach twisted with unease. There was something about this woman, something unnatural, something terrifying. Her mind raced. Who was she? Why was she here? Why did her name sound familiar? Then, in a single horrifying moment, it clicked. The texts, the threats, the woman Daniel had been with. This was his girlfriend. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Wait, Sarah? Sarah's expression didn't change. She took a slow step forward. Emily instinctively took one back. "Listen," Emily stammered, her pulse hammering in her chest. "I don't want any problems. I had no idea about you. I swear." Sarah laughed, a soft, almost chilling sound. "No problems? Sweetheart, you are the problem." Before Emily could react, Sarah lunged. The world exploded into chaos. Emily screamed, stumbling backward, her keys dropping onto the concrete. Sarah grabbed her, shoving her violently against the door. Emily fought, kicking, clawing, trying desperately to push Sarah off. But Sarah was prepared. She had waited for this moment. A struggle ensued, a violent, desperate clash between two women, one fighting for revenge, the other for her life. Then in one final decisive move, Sarah overpowered her. Emily's body went limp, her eyes wide with terror, her breath fading, and just like that, silence. Sarah stepped back, her chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths. The street remained eerily quiet, the only sound the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Emily lay still, motionless on the cold pavement. Sarah's fingers trembled, but her face remained unreadable. She had done it, but as she looked down at Emily's lifeless form, a question crept into her mind. Why didn't she feel satisfied? What happens when revenge doesn't bring the satisfaction you expected? What's the next move when the darkness has already consumed you? What do you do when you've just committed the unthinkable? Sarah Martinez stood over the body of the woman who had unknowingly stepped into her world and shattered it. For weeks, Sarah had fantasized about this moment, planned it to perfection, and yet why did she feel numb? Why wasn't the relief washing over her? She had expected some satisfaction, some feeling of justice, but all she felt was an icy void where her heart should be. But there was no time to reflect. She had minutes, maybe seconds, before someone would come outside. Sarah worked fast. She grabbed Emily's phone. She checked the street. No witnesses. She wiped her fingerprints from every surface she had touched. Her heart pounded. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but her hands were steady. Sarah had always been methodical, controlled. She wouldn't let a single mistake unravel everything. She dragged Emily's body inside, shutting the door behind her. Now came the next part, the escape. Sarah knew she had two options. Run. Leave immediately, disappear into the night, and hoped the police never connected her to this or staged the scene. Make it look like something else, a robbery, a break-in gone wrong. She chose option 2. Sarah grabbed a knife from the kitchen, scattering a few items, knocking over a chair. She made it look like a struggle had happened, like an unknown intruder had attacked Emily. Then, she carefully placed the knife in Emily's lifeless hand, a desperate attempt to confuse the forensic investigators who would eventually arrive. Finally, she grabbed a hoodie, threw it over her clothes, and exited through the back door, leaving as quietly as she had arrived. The night swallowed her whole. She walked briskly, forcing herself not to run, forcing herself to blend into the darkness. A few blocks away, she found her rental car. She opened the door, slipped inside, and gripped the steering wheel tightly. For a moment, she didn't move. Her breath was shallow, her mind racing. Had she forgotten anything? Did anyone see her? Then her phone buzzed. She jumped, her body tense. It was a text from Daniel. "Babe, where are you? We need to talk." Sarah let out a slow, shaking breath. She had just taken a life, but in Daniel's world, nothing had happened yet. And now, he was reaching out to her, clueless about the storm that was about to hit him. Sarah's lips curved into a cold, mirthless smile. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. If you just committed a crime, would you run? Or would you make sure every loose end was tied up before walking away? How do you return to normal life after crossing a line you can never uncross? Sarah Martinez had done it. She had traveled across states, confronted the woman she despised, and eliminated her. But now, sitting alone in a motel room, she felt numb. There was no rush of victory, no euphoria. Instead, she was left with an emptiness so profound, it made her feel disconnected from reality. Sarah reached for her phone, scrolling through the last texts she had exchanged with Daniel. "Babe, where are you? We need to talk." She should have felt something reading that message. Anger, sadness, satisfaction, but all she felt was tired. Her mind replayed the moment she left Emily's house. The quiet, chilling stillness after the crime. The methodical way she had staged the scene, ensuring that no direct connection pointed to her. She had driven for hours, leaving the city behind, her heart pounding at every stoplight, every time she saw a police car. Now, she was in a cheap motel, washed in fluorescent lighting, staring at the ceiling, wondering what came next. But she already knew. She had to return home. To Daniel, to the man who had made her spiral into this madness, to the one person who still had no idea what she had done. Sarah stood, walking to the mirror, staring at herself. Her reflection looked off, her eyes were dull, her face pale. She felt like a ghost of herself, like the woman she had been before this moment had already died along with Emily. She turned on the sink, splashing cold water on her face. "Get it together." Her voice was a whisper, hoarse and tired. She had come too far to fall apart now. Sarah wiped her face, grabbed her keys, and headed for the door. Tomorrow, she would be home. Tomorrow, she would see Daniel. And tomorrow, she would watch his reaction closely. Can someone truly return to normal after committing an unthinkable act? Or does the weight of their crime follow them forever? What's more terrifying? Getting away with murder or facing the person who caused it? Sarah had driven all night. The familiar roads of her hometown crept back into view. The street signs, the gas stations, the billboards, all unchanged. Everything looked the same, but she felt entirely different. As she pulled into Daniel's driveway, her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her heart thudded in her chest, not from fear of being caught, but from the anticipation of seeing him. Would he sense something was off? Would he look at her the same way? Or would he see the monster she had become? Sarah took a deep breath, grabbing her bag before stepping out of the car. The moment she knocked on his door, she heard his familiar voice from inside. "Coming!" The door swung open, and there he was, Daniel Thompson, tall, charismatic, and completely unaware of what she had done. His face lit up. For a split second, she felt an unfamiliar emotion. Was it guilt? Or was it rage? She forced a smile, stepping into the house. He pulled her into a tight embrace. "God, I missed you," he whispered into her hair. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to sink into the lie. "I missed you too." Daniel pulled back, studying her face. "You okay?" Sarah nodded. "Just tired." She was tired of the betrayal, tired of the lies, tired of pretending. Daniel led her to the couch, handing her a drink. "You wouldn't believe the week I've had," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's been insane." Sarah took a sip, watching him closely. "Yeah?" Daniel exhaled, shaking his head. "Emily's been missing." Sarah's stomach twisted, but her face remained neutral. Missing? Daniel nodded. Yeah, no one's heard from her. It's all over the news. They think something happened to her. Sarah stared at him, her pulse steady. And what do you think happened? Daniel hesitated, his gaze flickering. For a second, she saw something in his eyes. Something dark. I don't know, he sighed. I mean, I haven't talked to her, but it's weird, right? Just disappearing like that? Sarah leaned back, studying him. Maybe she had enemies. Daniel let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, maybe. Sarah watched him carefully, waiting for any sign of suspicion, any hint that he had figured out the truth. But there was nothing. Daniel had no idea. Sarah had killed for him, and he had no idea. A slow, chilling realization crept into her mind. Maybe Daniel wasn't as innocent as she had once thought. Maybe he knew more than he let on. Or maybe she had just become a pawn in a game she didn't even realize she was playing. What happens when you commit a crime for someone who might not be as clueless as they seem? Could Daniel be hiding secrets of his own? How long can you live a lie before the truth starts clawing its way to the surface? Sarah's hands gripped the fabric of her jeans, her knuckles white. She could feel Daniel's eyes flicker toward her, studying her reactions. The news anchor's voice felt like nails on a chalkboard, every syllable tightening around her chest. Police are still searching for 28-year-old Emily Carter, last seen 4 days ago in her home. Friends describe Emily as loving and hardworking, and they are desperate for any information on her whereabouts. Sarah forced herself to remain still, feigning interest but not too much. They found her car, Daniel murmured. Her breath hitched. Where? Daniel sighed, rubbing his jaw. A couple of miles from her place. Just sitting there, no sign of her. The police think something happened that night. There were no signs of a struggle in her house, but her phone was left behind. Sarah nodded slowly, taking a sip of her drink to keep her hands from shaking. That's strange. Daniel exhaled, his fingers drumming against the armrest. I don't know, it's just unreal. You think you know someone and then they just vanish? His words made her stomach twist. Was he suspicious? Or was this genuine confusion? Sarah had erased every trace of herself from Emily's house, but the investigation was picking up momentum. And if they found anything at all, her entire world would collapse. She needed to get ahead of it. Do you think the cops will figure out what happened? She asked, carefully. Daniel hesitated. Maybe. But it's been days. If someone did something to her, they've probably covered their tracks by now. Sarah's pulse thumped violently against her ribs. Daniel's tone was too calm. Did he suspect something? Or was he testing her? Can a person truly keep their guilt buried? Or will it always find a way to seep through the cracks? What's more terrifying, waiting for the truth to come out, or hearing it knock at your door? Sarah jerked awake at the sound. The house was silent, save for the rhythmic hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the clock. Then the knock came again. Not urgent, not panicked, just calm and deliberate. She turned to look at Daniel, who had also sat up, rubbing his face. Who the hell is knocking this late? Sarah's throat was dry. She already knew. Daniel got up, his bare feet padding against the wooden floor, and unlocked the door. The moment it opened, Sarah's worst fears materialized. Mr. Thompson? Daniel frowned, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, what's this about? The officer sighed, shifting on his feet. Sorry to disturb you so late, but we're following up on the Emily Carter case. We understand you were involved with her. Sarah's breath hitched. Daniel crossed his arms, looking frustrated, but not alarmed. Yeah, a while ago we broke up. The officer nodded, jotting something down in his notebook. Did she ever mention feeling unsafe or having issues with anyone recently? Sarah felt Daniel's gaze shift to her, and for a fleeting second, she thought he would turn her in right there. Instead, he shrugged. No idea, we haven't spoken in weeks. The officer turned his attention to Sarah. Miss Martinez, did you know Emily? Sarah's mouth felt like sandpaper. No, she said, her voice betraying nothing. I've heard about her, but we never met. The officer studied her for a moment. All right. If anything comes to mind, let us know. We're trying to put together a timeline of her last movements. Daniel nodded, already shutting the door before the officer had even turned away. The room felt suffocating. Sarah tried to steady her breathing. You okay? Daniel asked. She nodded, forcing a smile. Just tired. Daniel sighed, stretching his arms over his head. Same. Come on, let's get some sleep. Sarah didn't move. She couldn't, because now she knew. She knew the clock was ticking. How long can you keep a secret when the walls are already closing in? The knock on the police chief's door was unexpected. Detective Harris barely looked up as his colleague stepped inside. tossing a file onto the desk. Something new on the Emily Carter case? The officer exhaled deeply. Yeah, we might have a lead. Harris finally looked up. Go on. The officer flipped open a report, pointing to a new witness statement. We just got a call from one of Emily's neighbors. They remembered seeing a woman leave her house the night she disappeared. Description's vague, but it's enough to run with. Harris skimmed the notes, his brows furrowing. So we've got an unknown woman at the scene. The officer hesitated, not entirely unknown. Harris raised an eyebrow. The officer tapped on another section of the report. Description matches someone connected to Daniel Thompson. Harris's stomach dropped. Who? The officer's expression darkened. His girlfriend, Sarah Martinez. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Harris reached for his phone, dialing quickly. Get a unit to Daniel Thompson's house. Now, what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? And the one who thought they got away realizes the game is far from over. As the trial reached its climactic conclusion, the entire courtroom sat in a thick, suffocating silence. The prosecution had laid it all out: the cross-country flight, the chillingly methodical way Sarah Martinez tracked down Emily Carter, and the gruesome act that followed. It was an open and shut case, yet the defense fought tooth and nail to paint Sarah as a scorned woman who acted out in a moment of blind passion rather than cold-blooded premeditation. The jury, after weeks of hearing evidence, watching surveillance footage, and listening to Sarah's eerie 911 confession, was finally ready to decide her fate. The world held its breath as the foreman stood up, unfolded a sheet of paper, and announced the decision. We, the jury, find the defendant Sarah Martinez guilty of first-degree murder. Sarah showed no reaction, no remorse, no tears, no sign of the heartbreak that supposedly fueled her crime. The judge, unmoved by the defense's plea for leniency, delivered a life-altering judgment. Sarah Martinez, you have shown a shocking lack of remorse for your actions. This was not a crime of impulse, it was premeditated. You stalked, you planned, and you executed a defenseless woman in her own home. For this, the court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom, though filled with emotion, felt like a void of sound for Sarah. She had traded her entire life for a man who wasn't even in the courtroom. Daniel Carter had vanished into the shadows, refusing to testify, refusing to acknowledge the horror that had unfolded because of him. But justice had finally been served. Sarah Martinez flew across states for love, or at least that's what she convinced herself. But love doesn't leave a trail of destruction. Love doesn't pull a trigger in the name of revenge. And yet, in the heat of betrayal, obsession can cloud reality, turning lovers into killers and heartbreak into horror. This case was a tragic reminder that no one is worth throwing your life away for. No man, no woman, no relationship should push someone so far over the edge that they believe murder is their only way out. Sarah didn't just kill Emily Carter, she killed her own future. And for what? A man who disappeared into the background the moment things went south. Now, it's your turn to weigh in. Was Sarah a victim of love and manipulation, or was she always capable of this level of violence? Do you think justice was truly served, or should Daniel Carter have been held accountable for the role he played in this deadly love triangle? Could this happen again? Is someone, somewhere, planning a similar act of revenge right now? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss a case that shakes the very foundations of love, trust, and betrayal. Because in the world of true crime, sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a knife. It's the human heart.